So there's a lot of background story, I guess you can say, to the things that are spoken of in the gospel. But really what Jesus is trying to get at with this idea of the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath is that the rules of how to live, the rules of our faith, are not there just to do for the sake of doing them. You know, as much as I love, one of my favorite musicals is Fiddler on the Roof. If you remember the story of tradition, you know, and he talks about, you know, why do I do this? I don't know. We just do it because it's a tradition. And on the one hand, there is something beautiful to that. But on another hand, if that's all that we're resting on, that we just do this thing because we're supposed to do it, then there's no real intelligibility. And the moment that we stop feeling that we need to do it, there's no real reason to do it anymore. This is actually something that St. John Paul II would talk about, this notion of what we call taboos, things you're not supposed to do. But taboos, a lot of times, are almost, they're like a fragment of something that was connected to a whole way of thinking before that made sense, that was intelligible, but we sort of lost that meaning, and it's just kind of something out here. And so we just kind of look at it as, well, we just don't do that because we just don't do that. And yet, if you live that life for a long enough time, then all of a sudden it's sort of like, well, why not do it? Because there isn't any reason, you know, there's not any reason to not do it anyway. And that's what the Pharisees are falling into here. They're falling into this idea of taking things that are good in the law. The law was given to us to show us how to live. But little by little, their movement, the Pharisee movement, which actually was very, very good in the beginning. If you remember the story of the Maccabees, it's in the Old Testament, these freedom fighters that said, we are going to defend our faith against this Greek army that was coming, that was trying to rip it away from us. That's where the Pharisees actually started. But little by little, they lost sight of why they were doing what they were doing. They lost the whole fact that that was supposed to lead them to a relationship with the Lord. And little by little, they started just to say, well, we're just doing this just because we're supposed to do it. And they made the rules God instead of the rules leading them to God. Do you see the difference there? That this is what Jesus is trying to bring them back to, is to say, the Sabbath, all that you're supposed to do on the Sabbath, it's to bring you to me. It's not just to do for the sake of doing, but it's supposed to lead you to a relationship with me. And that's actually what this king Hezekiah that we hear in our first reading, this is what we see happening with him. Is we see him encountering the mercy of the Lord, healing him through the prophet Isaiah. And then it says, go up to the temple after that. And you know, this psalm that we just prayed is actually, it's not from David, it's not from Solomon, but it's actually from King Hezekiah. This is actually from this king who was sick, who was mortally ill, who was rescued, and now because of that relationship, he's now living his life for God, and he's praising God in the temple. He's, in a sense, going to church. Not because, well, that's just the thing to do, but it's because of who God is in his life that propels him to actually live that out. So, thinking now we're getting ready for First Holy Communion. One of the beautiful things about witnessing these First Holy Communions that we've been seeing for all these different days is it's an opportunity to bring us back to the beginning. As we grow up, maybe communion becomes something that we merely just do, because we're supposed to do this, and this is what we're Catholics, and this is what we're supposed to do. But when we look at these hearts that are getting ready to receive Holy Communion, there's this openness to a relationship with the God who loves them. They're excited. They want to be a tabernacle of the Lord. They want the Lord to prepare them to be a sanctuary, as they sing many, many times. May it be something that can teach us, to remind us to go back to that first love, to remember why we say amen in the first place, why we come to church, not merely because it's the thing to do, but it's because God is here. He loves us. He's poured out this healing strength upon us, and he's pulling us by these, Prophet Hosea would say, these like cords of mercy, these strings of love, saying, I know that your heart will not be satisfied by anything in this world. So I break into this world, sharing my heart, so that it might give you that longing for heaven. The Mass is ultimately about the fuel that gets us ready for heaven. It's the longing. Now I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, because I know that we have some Narnians that are here in this congregation, and maybe who have been following the virtual neighborhood for many, many years. I think there's been like 80 episodes or so. But I want you to think about, in those stories, which are amazing adventure stories, but all of them really have this longing in them for heaven. And there's this one character, his name is Reepicheep. He's a mouse. He's a mouse that's a knight, which is pretty cool if you think about it. A little mouse who's actually one of the bravest knights around, and one of the greatest warriors, even though he's like this small. But he talks about when he was younger, his babysitter, who happened to be a talking tree, which is kind of cool, but this babysitter would sing this song. Singing this song saying, where the waves grow sweet, doubt not, Reepicheep. For there your heart will seek the utter east. And that's Aslan's country. That's kind of this image of heaven. And he said that, I don't know what it means, but I can't let go of that song. And it's something that just moves my heart to want to go east, to want to go all the way to the very edge of the world. And he says, I'm willing. There's a fire in my heart that I can't turn back. And I'm going to take he has a little like boat that's just like a little, almost like a little cup, because he's so little. And he's like, I'm just going to keep going. And then when that fails me and that starts sinking, then I'm going to just swim. And I'm just going to keep going until I get to the end, or I sink in the attempt to do that. And ultimately, we hear the story of he ultimately gets to the very, very place where his heart is longing. And he has this joyful smile, as if everything, all of his adventures, all of these things going forward, it all made it worthwhile once he got home. Because his true home was with Aslan. So that's a story, and it's an amazing adventure, but what Reepicheep, the little mouse, reminds us of is that the Eucharist, when we receive Jesus, he puts, if we're open to it, because we can receive and just be like, amen, and then we can just kind of go about our business, but if we're open to it, he can put this fire of longing for heaven in our heart, that we can be like Reepicheep. It's like that song that babysitter gave to Reepicheep, where he's like, I can't let go of it. It's like a fire that just keeps me moving. So let the Eucharist do that in your life. When you receive Jesus, be like Reepicheep. Hear that song of the Lord's love saying, I have so much more for you. That's a good reminder for all of us as well.